today, Astrazeneca halts trials. A lot more coming right up. Thank you so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys are doing well. Shout out to the loyal patrons, subscribers, and the followers on Periscope. Thank you guys so much for all that you do and for coming in. I do apologize for the lateness. And sometimes it happens around here. But I really appreciate your patience and for you coming in and taking care with the channelytics as always. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much, Chrysler Imperial H, for doing your diligence and supporting the channel. I appreciate it and all your support. Thank you so much. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Little Miss Goth, Let the Truth Be Told, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And we have just a few updates today. And, it seems like Groundhog's Day because we deal with some of the same things regularly. But we'll dig right into those. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H and Garrett Reed. Thank you so much for coming in today. Hope you guys are well. And thank you so much for the channelytics. Thank you for sharing out the stream at Chrysler Imperial H. Everything you guys do works out the channel. Thank you so much. Helps us stay in the fight around here. So without further ado, I will go into a little bit of what I'm calling a opening statement. I will go a little bit into that. And I'll get us in and out. Nobody gets hurt around here. So with that said, let's just go ahead and let's get going here. Now, the top stories today will be AstraZeneca, Google and Amazon pledges, of course, with a little bit of de Blasio economics. Economics de Blasio is what I might want to call it. And Trump's response to the 1619 project. So we're going a little bit cultural and economics, the whole nine. So as always, I appreciate you guys so much for coming in and taking care of the channel. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm saying we've had some challenges throughout the week. Just give me a 1 if you could actually hear me. Yeah, I'm not really sure. It could, who knows? It could be technocracy. Who knows? Also, the conditions around here. I'm not sure if that's affecting connectivity and bandwidth and all of that. I'm not sure. So you guys can hear me. Great. Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate your guys' patience. So, and what I'm calling opening statement, like I said, I call this a bit of a follow-up because you have the confluence of the pandemic and the economics, and you have, of course, radical leadership and chaos. Chaos. I really can't really euphemize the chaos at this point. But it's like we've been primed for most of the things that we've seen, and so I think we're becoming more desensitized as time goes on, and so we'll go ahead and jump into this. So I'm going to first start with our AstraZeneca story, because this is a follow-up, because yesterday we went into some specifics on the actual trials in which we covered the HBCU taking part in these actual trials. And of course, that was yesterday. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. So we're going to go to the AstraZeneca story. And this is, I think I'm pretty sure there's up to at least nine companies that are actually dealing with, up to nine companies that are, manufacturing or doing, trials, or handling this actual handling the trials on the pandemic and vaccines. And so that's where we're going to go back to today. But we do have, there's of course, there's things from all over the world, and AstraZeneca is looks like at the forefront of some of the halt on this. So shout out to everybody in the stream. So what I'm going to bring you is the New York Post. This one's going to come from the New York Post. I'm telling you, the New York Post is actually, it seems like they're doing a bit of a shift, if you will. We're experiencing some type of a shift. And I'm not sure if I wouldn't say it's a shift. They're doing what's expedient, I guess. They got to sell stories or sell papers or sell whatever they can. So according to this comes out of the New York Post. AstraZeneca halts COVID-19 vaccine trial after possible serious side effect. So this is written by Kate She. And we'll see how long I last on this, because, technocrats are everywhere. So according to this, drug giant AstraZeneca has put its pandemic vaccine testing on hold after a study participant suffered a possible serious side effect, a report said on Tuesday. The pharmaceutical manufacturer has been testing a potential vaccine it developed with the University of Oxford in Britain, and a UK participant's suspected negative reaction to it prompted what the company called a, quote, routine, end quote, temporary halt to its program, said the health website Stat News, which is tied to the Boston Globe. Quote, this is a routine action which has to happen whenever there is a potentially unexplained illness in one of the trials, while it is investigated, ensuring we maintain the integrity of the trials, end quote, AstraZeneca said in a statement. Quote, in large trials, illnesses will happen by chance, but must be independently reviewed to check this carefully, end quote. So there you're getting that. That's your New York Post, and that's their statement, or their framing of this halt, if you will. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to JT Waterman. Garrett Reed, thank you so much. Good morning to you. So yeah, so there again, I'm not convinced that these trials are going to be, that they're going to bear the results, that they're going to bear the results that they are looking for. And that's, to me, I would say even worldwide. What is it? Operation Warp Speed is what President Trump is referring to this as. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is phase 3. We're in phase 3 of the trials. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H, who says, sounds like something that happens when they try to fast track something. Yeah, well, interesting enough, it's not just the HBCU that I discovered that's actually it's rolled out the set of trials in America. Um, they're Chicago is actually rolling out the same. They're doing trials in Chicago. I mean, you know, who would have thought? I honestly, I just it's just bizarre the way that the way that they justify the way that they justify or a demographic or target a demographic on these issues. And it's an issue for me. It's an issue for me the way that it's being set up. And it's like I said, I just don't see anything good coming out of the situation, not the way it's being set up. So according to this, which I'm actually going to play this clip for you. This one's coming out of Chicago. They have an update on their trial in Chicago, so why not take it from them? So this is the CEO's pledge safety for the vaccines as phase 3 Astrazeneca trials begin in Chicago. So you've already had one on an international scale or abroad that's been halted. So we'll see, we'll see what this looks like. So I'm going to share this one with you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So let's hear from I guess this is Chicago 7. Let's take this story. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So, yeah, and I will say they always use vulnerable communities. I mean, Africa rolled out the trust stamp a couple of months ago. Gates rolled out the trust stamp, and that was with Gavi and a couple of other pharmaceutical, they kind of conglomerated a whole bunch of companies to work to create the trust stamp. So we're gonna do that one on the Chicago trial. So I just think that the Black community has been targeted. They're going to target the Black community, and it's funny that the same people that are being targeted are the same ones that vote for the same types of leaders year after year after year after year. And this is turning the Black community into some type of test rat facilities, from the HBCU to now Chicago. I say it's freaking eugenics is what I smell. Shout out to everybody in the stream. And then they might yank this one down, but the truth burns and it cuts. But I'm not supposed to be saying that. I'm not supposed to be independent thinker. I'm supposed to be singing and lined up for the crumbs and for the pet projects, right? That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm an oddity, right? Shout out to everybody in the stream. Let's go to News 7. Sorry for the delay, guys. Just 1 second here.
Open. Remember having that feeling for the first time? The first day you opened?
Morning, 9 CEOs signed a historic pledge promising safety will be the top priority in the development of a vaccine. That includes Astrazeneca. Its vaccine trial is at Rush Medical College right here in Chicago. Dr. Beverly Shaw is with us live this morning. She's an infectious disease physician with the Department of Internal Medicine there. Doctor, it's nice to have you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you heard people say that even if there is a vaccine that they wouldn't get it, or they're concerned about how quickly the process is moving along?
I have heard that, and obviously that's a battle we'll be faced with dealing with. The first thing we need to do, though, is find out whether one of these vaccines is effective and safe, and then address those issues.
Well, on that, how safe can you guarantee a COVID-19 vaccine will be?
Well, we are going through the large phase 3 trials currently, and those really will be the landmark trials that address safety as
Sorry, guys. I'm not sure. Sorry for the delay there, but I'll try to avoid these technical issues.
well as efficacy. A phase 3 trial can only go forward when we have good information from phase 1 and phase 2 data that warrant a phase 3 trial. So for many of these products, we have approached that, and these are the trials that will tell us.
You mentioned that you're in phase 3. Does that mean that any human being is actually getting this vaccine yet as part of the test?
Correct. So, we are going to be doing the Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine, and phase 1 and phase 2 trials have completed early parts of it such that we can move forward with a phase 3. Those patients who did get the vaccine in the phase 1 and 2 trials, many of them are still in longer term follow-up, but those studies did show that there were no significant safety concerns. In the Lancet paper, over 500 people did receive the AstraZeneca vaccine, and in their other trials, over 5,000 have already received it without any significant safety concerns.
So
And
we're moving through the phases here, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, doctor, but based on what you've seen so far and the progress that we're seeing, how far away from a vaccine are we at this point?
well, so the phase 3 trials will really be the ones that demonstrate, do fewer people get COVID who get the vaccine versus those who get a placebo. So these are placebo-controlled trials. And obviously, once we fully enroll, which each of these trials we're going to try and do in 8 to 12 weeks, then we have to wait until enough people get COVID who are in the vaccine trial to determine whether there is a difference in the numbers who get it, who receive the vaccine versus the placebo.
Are you
So
prepared to say, or can you say that a vaccine will be ready before Election Day?
I think that is very, very unlikely.
Okay. Fewer people seem to be getting seriously ill, doctor. Fewer people seem to be dying in Illinois. Based on your assessment alone, do you think we're in good shape as we head into the fall?
Well, I think there are probably two reasons why fewer people are dying. One is we've learned some things in terms of treating patients with COVID. So I think we are doing a better job than what we were faced with in the spring. Secondly, the pandemic has sort of moved into a younger population who are just going to do better dealing with the infection than older people. I think we all still need to be vigilant that this is definitely not over. There's still transmission occurring and new cases every day, and it could worsen if we let our guard down.
Got it. Dr. Beverly Shaw, good to see you this morning. Thank you for your guidance and the information on how the vaccine is coming along. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I'm not, this is the reason that I brought this up was that I don't see the kind of, it's just, there's just too much that they don't know. It seems, and they're not, she's not giving any real concrete or anything. She's not giving any concrete answers. But they're not. She also didn't talk about the specifics on the people that are going to be the subjects they're going to use for their study, for their case study. I don't know, JT Waterman. That's a good question. I don't know what type of cultures they're using, what type of tissue. I'm not I have no idea. I'm not, not even biology. I think basic biology is what I know, but I don't know enough about, any of the virology or what their methods are or what's included in this. And I don't think that's going to be disclosed. And the people, their subjects that they're going to use are not likely to ask these kinds of questions. So, but I did do a report from NBC that said, in fact, that that the vaccine is not going to work. It will work only if the trials include Black participants. So I just think that only if it includes Black participants. So, but they don't talk about any underlying conditions. They don't talk about the trends or the genetic tendencies of the Black population's profile. They don't talk about that. And yeah, I've read about, of course, different the different types of viruses or whatnot, but that they use in these things. But I have no idea. And actually, that's going to be upon. I think people are going to need to do their own research, and they're going to have to do their own fact checking if they are subject to it, or I don't know. I don't know what are the chances that they're going to make that mandatory, or they're going to make that mandatory for these college students. I just find it really it seems a little, something is off here. Okay, you've got Gates that targeted West African communities with vaccines, and he's got his trust stamp rolled out, and you've got 9 companies here in the States, but then they're saying that they need Black participants, and then they go to the campuses of Black students. So figure they're not coming to them. They're going to go where they are. So I'm not sure what's the catch. I don't know. It's a little bit dense, and I don't know I think 20 years from now, we'll hear about it. We'll hear about who was actually tested and what that actually looked like, what they actually experienced. So I have no idea at this point. It's not, it doesn't look good. I find it very disconcerting and very deceptive that the HBCU would be a part of a testing site for this. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much. And then the fact that Chicago, a place where life is already hanging in the bounds, I find that to be. I find it to be a target. I find it. I mean, I'm not. No matter how misguided someone is, I don't. To me, anything that's going to. We've got too many people that have histories with humanitarian, with bad histories, crimes against humanities, dealing with this whole thing from the WHO. You've got too many. So shout out to everybody in the stream. So we'll continue to follow that story. I just wanted to, this is just, to me, this is a profile. This is a test rats. So I'm not comfortable with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story, because I really don't want to go into a rant on that, which is very easy for me to do. Very easy. Because if I suspect, because my gut tells me something very ominous and very evil, and people selling their souls, selling souls of people that, people being sold out, and they don't know they're being sold out through the pipeline of education. I mean, as if the colleges aren't indoctrination camps already. And many of these colleges are run like liberal cities. and then you take something like that, you take something like a trial into a place like that, and you give them money, it just looks bad. It looks very bad. And I don't know if any people are going to have the guts or the gumption to call it out, but I just don't. I think it's not going to bode well. So shout out to everybody in the stream, and I'm going to get away from it before I go into a rant. Sometimes rants are, sometimes rants are a release, but I don't want to do it. I think it's too heavy right now. It's a little heavy. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, the de Blasio economics and the Great Reset, because of course, de Blasio, let's talk about de Blasio just for a second. We talk about de Blasio and also the fact that Google and Amazon are making pledges. And, we've had AOC and Amazon had run-ins prior to this thing coming. So, there's lots of dynamics there. So let's go ahead and go to de Blasio's recent rhetoric. He's all about wealth redistribution. And of course, that's a part of the UN agenda as well, is wealth redistribution. And what that means, of course, that means tax the shit out of whomever. Okay, so there you go. There's my obscenity for today. I apologize, but one every 9 months or so, kind of slips out. So what we're going to do is we'll go over to the We Forum. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Hope you guys are doing well. And if anybody's in New York, I'd love to hear from you. Anybody. All right, guys. So what you see before you is coming from the World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum, they give you the tone, the timbre, they give you the framework of what their vision is. They give you the framework for the Great Reset. They give you, this is also very apropos, and it's related to, we talk about, Joe Biden says, build back. So that means, when you build something back, that means you're building something that you've torn down. And they're claiming they're doing it with a framework of humanity, but it's actually in economics. It's, we've got many politicians that have benefited from this pandemic. We've got many. Okay. And of course, earlier civilizations, they destroyed things because they didn't think there was anything worth preserving. And then they just, build a civilization back on the corpse of the previous civilization. Shout out to Chrysler. Thank you so much. So here we are. This is Amazon and Google among big U.S. companies pledging to hire 100,000 people from marginalized New York communities. So that's what brings us to New York. So with that said, let's give you a little bit of a statement from de Blasio from just less than 2 weeks ago. Let's say roughly 11 days ago, de Blasio, New York Post. De Blasio calls to, quote, tax the wealthy, even as rich taxpayers flee New York. Now, people are leaving New York in droves. I mean, I have friends, of course, that are, whether they're retired or whatever, they go to Florida for relief. But at a time like this, I mean, with the crime rates up, from shootings to robberies, you name it, they're fleeing New York. Now, this is written by Julia Marsh. Let's see, I'm just going to give you a little bit of landscape here. Mayor de Blasio made a public plea on Friday for taxing the rich and redistributing their money, even as the Big Apple reels from the pandemic-induced budget crisis that's already caused well-heeled New Yorkers to head for the heels. Quote, help me tax the wealthy. Help me redistribute wealth. Help me build affordable housing in white communities if you want desegregation. All right, you guys, are you picking that up? I'm going to say it again for the people in the back or for the people that are driving by with their windows down. Quote, help me tax the wealthy. Help me redistribute wealth. Help me build affordable housing in white communities if you want desegregation, end quote, de Blasio said on WNYC's The Brian Lair, end quote, show after a caller asked about integrating public schools. Quote, if you just talk about it and feel self-satisfied, God bless you, end quote, de Blasio said to the caller, who cited a New York Times podcast called Nice White Parents, end quote, that argues white parents should do more to bring racial equality to schools. So there you go. It's all white people's fault, right? You know, I tell you, New York is definitely a different animal. You know, one elite against another elite, one elite calling another elite, virtue signaling over another elite. Quote, I'll continue here. Sorry about that, guys. That's not actually going to change things. What changes things is redistribution of wealth. Tax the wealthy at a much higher level, end quote. The mayor said, adding that he'd never heard of the podcast. Quote, I just feel like this is a lot of cocktail party comfort going on rather than people honestly dealing with this issue, end quote, he said. Okay. Councilman Robert Holden, Democrat of Queens, said the mayor should cut fat from the city's budget instead of squeezing more funds out of his constituents. Quote, everyone should pay their fair share in taxes, but instead of begging for even more money from taxpayers, the mayor should consider cutting out the enormous waste in his bloated budgets with programs like Thrive NYC that have no measurable outcomes, end quote. Holden said cutting the $1.25 billion mental health plan run by First Lady Shirlane McRae. Quote, middle-class residents are already being driven out of the city, and the tax the wealthy mantra is just de Blasio's code for continuing to use the middle class as his cash cow because he considers everyone who makes a decent living as, quote, wealthy. Quote, we're not fooled by this, end quote, Holden said. So there's a little bit of landscape for you there, which, you know, New York is struggling quite a bit. I think, shout out to Old Head Deuce. So let's go on to this. And I just want to give you that landscape. Now that comes from the New York Post. So I'll give you that reference, and then we'll go into what Google plans to do. So everybody's on this whole disparities and iniquities and, you know, taxing the rich and the wealthy and sustainability. Meanwhile, the middle class keeps getting crushed, right? Is that how this works? Okay, so what you have there is you have your NY Post there. So we're going to go on to we'll go on to the article with the Amazon from the We Forum. So they're pledging, Amazon, Google, they're at it, pledging to hire 100,000 people from marginalized New York communities. All right, so according to this, the CEO wants to recruit 100,000 new staff from minority and underprivileged communities, which is, to me, segregation. It's a bit of affirmative action and segregation. You know, there's a thing about these progressives. They use yesterday's oppression and marginalization to today, using yesterday's oppression and marginalization today, because they somehow think that they know what's best and about advancing society. And in 20, 30 years, they'll come back, oh, well, we made a mistake. And, you know, well, we did, that was wrong. And, you know, that was just one of our pet projects. You know, we really wanted to help these little people out over here. We really wanted to. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So according to this, the CEOs are collaborating to recruit the workers from New York's low-income minority communities by 2030. So here again, look, guys, UN Agenda 2030. Is it, do you need, I mean, I can give you do you need a graphic, a formal graphic on the UN Agenda 2030? That is the premise for most of the stuff that comes out. to address racial and economic inequities exacerbated by the pandemic. So, that's okay. That's what we're doing. Their pledges include providing entry-level positions, apprenticeships, and on-the-job learning at major US companies for 25,000 students from the City University of New York, that's CUNY. They include corporate leaderships from AIG, Amazon, Citi, Goldman Sachs, Google, IBM, MasterCard, Microsoft, and Wells Fargo. The technocrats. That's what that translates into. Okay. The companies will partner with education institutes such as CUNY, the city's government, nonprofits, and community organizations. The bosses of 27 U.S. banking, tech, media, health, and consulting firms have announced a collective goal to hire 100,000 New Yorkers from these low-income and diverse communities by 2030. Yes, 2030. So everything is on tap for 2030. Okay, so the corporate leaders are working together on this initiative called the New York Job CEO Council. The aim is to equip young people from the city's low-income and minority communities with skills and resources they need for the jobs of the future. The pandemic crisis has widened systemic racial and economic divides. Keep in mind, this is the weforum.org. New York City's poor neighborhoods have been hit the hardest, with Black and Latino residents suffering the highest death rates. At the same time, the pandemic has pushed the world towards the deepest recession since the 1930s Great Depression. In June, the unemployment rate in New York passed 20%. Okay. Many young adults are facing bleak job and wage prospects. But even before the pandemic crisis, unemployment in the Bronx was 85% higher than in Manhattan. Meanwhile, jobs in high demand fields were going unfilled. Okay, so creating a talent pipeline. So I guess they are just, I guess you've got to grab all of these technocrats, and get them on board. But these are the same technocrats that support these paramilitaries and these groups. Also, BLM, you name it. I'm sure they are. So they're working with education leaders, the city governments, the community organizations, and nonprofits. And all of this is social justice. Social justice council is generally what they've come up with money, and they needed money to put the money behind it. The technocrats to get behind it. So I'd be interested to see how this all comes out. So you have the co-chairs of groups. The co-chairs of the groups are JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, EY CEO, the global chair, Carmine DeCibio, IBM CEOs. You've got, the money. I guess if you got the money, you can make many things happen, right? Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Old Head Deuce. Thank you so much for coming in. So we're going to round out that story with, Amazon. It's funny how they're so pro opportunities all of a sudden, considering, the rhetoric and the games that they were playing with AOC earlier this year. I mean, earlier, not this year, but a couple of years ago, probably less than a couple of years ago now. Because, she had issue with greed and, I mean, I don't know, the people in New York, who knows? I think I told you guys there's somebody that's running. Is it Antoine Tucker, I believe? He's actually running against her. So, of course, this is back in 2019. This is last year. Amazon, canceled their plans to build an expansive corporate campus in New York after facing the fierce backlash from the lawmakers and progressive activists, union leaders who continued that the tech giant did not deserve nearly $3 billion in government incentives. So, you have a lot of people that have run, they ran that anti-Amazon interference and Amazon didn't show up. So who knows? Poor New York. Like I said, if anybody's in the stream that's from New York, I'd love to hear from you. Shout out to Unique View. Thank you so much for coming in. Shout out to Brittany Duh. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys so much for taking care with the Channelytics. I really appreciate it. Really makes things work. So thank you guys so much for hitting the like, unlike, share, and making sure that you're still subscribed. That makes a huge difference. All right. So what we're going to do, I think New York, the leadership that they have, it's not quite much to be desired there. So I want to shout out everybody for coming. Brittany. Brittany is from New York. I see you've got your Statue of Liberty right there. It's a nice way to raise your hand. How's it going in New York, Brittany? I mean, do you see the same things? Is it consistent with what's being reported? I mean, are there huge losses? Are there much boarding of the districts? I mean, I've seen some footage on like maybe even Manhattan being boarded up, and like what's the morale there like right now, if you don't mind sharing? So I appreciate it. But yeah, we're gonna move on from New York, and I appreciate Brittany for raising her hand, and hope you're doing well, Brittany. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the Trump's response to the 1619 project. Now we talked about that before, and yeah, we are just at such a huge precipice in this country right now, whether it's cultural values, education, functionalism, the values of functionalism, and how they're all being just torn down with this conflict theory, this race theory, this liberation theory. We're just being ripped. The values are being ripped, and I just think that a lot of this is not it's going to be irreparable. I just don't think I don't think there's and I don't echo Barack Obama often at all, but the magic wand, I mean, all of our institutions have been infiltrated with conflict theorists, SJWs, progressives. It's extremely infiltrated. I mean, I'm hearing about cities. My friends are telling me about their cities that have been run by Democrats. Their mayors are considering citizen police. I mean, oh yikes! I think it was plausible that when you see these larger cities, the larger metros, making these radical changes, but it's taken hold. I think many of these other cities are going to try to follow suit. They're going to try to follow suit. They're going to try to follow suit with the changes in why either defunding police or eliminating, or they're going to do whatever they see. They're going to be copycats, no matter what it does to their communities. So for the final story, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. For our final story today, we are going to go to our vetted source, the New American, TNA, and we'll have a word here from our friends over at the JBS. So once again, this segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education training, and development of the American voters. So with that said, we're going to go over to the story on the 1619 project, which I think has gotten quite a bit of a buzz. And who knows? Who knows? I think New York will probably be one of the first ones to pick up the. They'll be the first ones to trailblaze with this debacle that they're doing on history with their revisionist history project. All right, SJWs are teaching history now. So you went from a bunch of liberals teaching the history, liberal teachers teaching the history, to just full-blown SJW history, revisionist history. So according to this was written today and released today by the TNA, that Trump threatens funding for schools teaching 1619 project. This is written by Stephen Neal. Okay, according to this framing, it says that President Trump appears to be fighting attempts by the left to erase American history. A Washington, D.C. working group called District of Columbia Facilities and Commemorative Expressions, formed by Mayor Muriel Bowser, released findings and recommendations for changes to city facilities names on August 31st. The group was tasked with determining how many of the district-owned or federal-owned facilities bear the names of people, quote, inconsistent with DC values and in some way encourage the oppression of African Americans and other communities of color, or contributed to our long history of systemic racism, end quote. I tell you, that word, if I had $1 every time I heard it. Besides making recommendations to change the names of many DC schools, parks, and other public buildings. On the page 22 of the report, the DC FACES offered recommendations for the federal government to, quote, remove, relocate, or contextualize, end quote, a group of national memorials and monuments, including the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, the Christopher Columbus Fountain, and the Benjamin Franklin statue. The Trump administration reacted swiftly, with Interior Secretary David Bernhardt tweeting, "Not on my watch, never going to happen." Okay, so he's citing the mayor's position, of course, here in the text. And then, of course, this is coming from Mayor Muriel Bowser, saying, this July, I tasked the DC FACES working group with evaluating public spaces to ensure the namesake's legacy is consistent with hashtag DC values. They have delivered the report, and I look forward to reviewing and advancing their recommendations. So this is apparently a graphic or promotion of the DC Faces working group report. Okay, so you notice it's down if you look here, you've got it's a Black Lives Matter mural. I mean, your eyes automatically go to that. So this is coming from the mayor of DC. Following that, Trump responded to a tweet on September 6th calling California implementing the New York Times 1619 project in their public schools. Department of Education is looking at this. If so, they will not be funded. So that comes from President Trump's tweet. Department of Education is looking at this. If so, they will not be funded. Okay, so Trump stated at the press conference the following day, I want people to know everything they can about our history. I am not a believer in cancel culture. If you don't study the bad, it could happen again. I want it studied very, very carefully and studied accurately. But we grew up with a certain history, and now they are trying to change our history, revisionist history. That's why they want to take down our monuments, take down our statues. I saw something the other day, which was absolutely horrendous, the Washington Monument. They want to rename it the DC Committee. But the DC Committee is all Democrats. Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, we are talking about this is the big stuff now. This is the big stuff. And they want to rename it. They want to redesignate it. They want to take some down. No, we don't do that. Never going to happen with me. So reaction to Trump's statements varied from support to resistance. Okay, of course, with Nicole Hannah-Jones, the Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times journalist responsible for the 1619 Project, responding with, quote, "Do those concerns about cancel culture and McCarthyism and censorship only apply to the left, or do they apply to the POTUS threatening to investigate schools for teaching American journalism? Silence is deafening here." So, of course, she goes on to further attack the stance. Well, the attack was, it went on with Seth Cohen in another piece in Forbes. So, of course, I'll give you a little bit of this, but we saw Trump addressed a lot of these things on his during the July 4th speech at Mount Rushmore. And of course, they drew it down to conspiracy theories. I said that's their answer. That's a response to everything. So according to Seth Cohen's, in his piece that he wrote on Sunday morning, President Trump tweeted an attack on the 1619 Project, threatening to withhold funding from California schools teaching the popular journalism project focused on the rise and impact of slavery in the United States. With his newest tweet, the president's actions raise a troubling question. Why is the Trump administration threatening to censor the way schools teach about the history of slavery and racism in the United States? But perhaps the most troubling of all, Trump's tweets and the arguments of his administration and allies demonstrate a belief that history should be taught in a way that limits criticism of the United States. Further, Trump himself has shown that he is willing to take action, constructively censor those whose views of history conflict with those of the administration. That's not teaching history, that's shaping national propaganda. For those unfamiliar with the 1619 Project, it is a collection of essays, short fiction, and poems. You talk about propaganda, right? Propaganda, short fiction, poems, forming a, quote, ongoing initiative from the New York Times Magazine that began in August 2019, the 400th anniversary of the beginning of slavery. It aims to reframe the country's history by placing consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of our national narrative, end quote. The project has received accolades from those who seem to be intent on rewriting American history and the significant criticisms from those concerned with historical accuracy. For liberals, the project helps unify their message that America is and always was a racist country. In other words, Nicole Hannah-Jones, it is time for this country to pay its debts. It is time for reparations, end quote. Considering that the 1619 Project's deep-rooted historical inaccuracies, undisguised hatred of capitalism, embrace of celebrity and identity politics, President Trump is entirely correct to defund the project and its rewriting of American history. It is an attack on America itself. As George Orwell wrote in 1984, quote, "Those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future." And that's why I've said on this show, grab your journal, your notebooks and catalog whatever you can, because they are rewriting it as we speak. It's already Orwell was right on the mark. I don't walk around, calling people prophets of any kind, but I mean, I guess it wasn't hard to tell. You could see where things were going, or you could see the seeds that they've been sowing with their agenda for years. And so I would imagine, you better start buying books. You better start buying if you have kids, you better start buying books that were written. You might get What's on the Shelf and even try to go back even further. I mean, I mentioned before, we had encyclopedias in my day, if you will. But I don't see independent people out peddling or selling those encyclopedias anymore. They just, I guess they just write into Merriam-Webster and, just get this whole thing about history, living and breathing history, living and breathing constitutions. I mean, the state of California, that's one of the first lines of their state constitution, is that this is a living and breathing document. This is Dropbox. I mean, the values, the fabrics, the things that unify, the values that unify the country and the society, the functionalism perspective aspect of this is going down the tubes. It's going down fast. Old Head Deuce says, I'm too young to know what an encyclopedia is. No, I'm not. I'm actually not. Yeah, but then, Wikipedia, even in college, they would say, that Wikipedia is not a viable source. At least that's what they said, whether they, but encyclopedias that was a part of, the culture, you had more advocacy for self-education, self-autonomy. You don't have that now. I mean, like I said, I just don't, just sowing hate and sowing seeds, because to me, when people are doing revisionist history, it's almost like you're saying there is no history. So it can't, it can always be redone, reconstructed. It can always be rewritten based on their ideology. There is no, I don't know whether it's like they're functioning as postmodernist. Pluto is a planet of Aye, old head. Interesting. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Old Head Deuce mentions thrift store children's books. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually a great place. Thrift stores, but flea markets. I think they still have books there, or at least you can find them there. Or I don't know if you can find a set of encyclopedias. I would imagine that even the encyclopedia, maybe it went digital, or it was marketed, it was going digital. I don't know how long ago, but encyclopedias weren't cheap back in the day. But I think they were worth it. It kind of, you might not have to go to the library right away if you had that, if you had some reference. You say, oh well, I have to do a book report, and I don't know. I just think that I think that the idea of a book report was just a block. Say, okay, I got writer's block now. I got to do a book report. And, they would say that, but I think that they failed to actually teach kids how to read or think. Like you can't just say, write a book report. Write a book report. Or what does that consist of? Like in these are elementary, like early elementary years of school. First, second, third grade. Draw pictures but it's just, the structure was just not there. And Old Head says, I can research because of encyclopedias. See, Old Head? You're rare. We have to hold on to you here at Black Spring. Thank you so much for sharing that. So guys, we're probably going to wrap up in just a bit here. I appreciate everybody so much for coming in. And I guess stay safe and I don't like to use that. I would say stay vigilant, I guess would be more accurate. So I really appreciate you guys so much for coming on. But yeah, it's just, so the summation was today we were just looking at these developments with these vaccines. What I suspect that they have, that they're turning these HBCUs into test rat facilities. I am not happy with that. I'm not happy to hear about that at all. And I have some very, very dark thoughts about why did that even happen. Yeah, I'd take the Tuskegee Project out of it, but what? It's like everybody's selling their soul for a few dollars. People selling, and they might yank me for this. Black people selling other black people out. Where have we seen that before? I mean, can it happen again? Will it happen again? Oh yeah. See, they're going to go, and I wouldn't, I'd bet that they're throwing money at these institutions. They're going to throw money at these HBCUs. They're going to throw money at these churches, these black churches, to get them to do whatever. You don't care if they turn your facility into a mouse, send a mouse to college, send a mouse to COVID college. You guys remember that campaign? We talked a little a bit about that. So yeah, but you have to be careful when you're dealing with tons of money, and I don't know. So shout out to everybody in the stream. I'm going to do a shout out for everyone. Shout out to the loyal patrons as well as the subscribers. I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you guys so much for all the patience, because yesterday was a rough stream. It was extremely rough. Barely got through that one. But I want to give a shout out to everybody. I'll start with the patrons. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Little Miss Goth. I appreciate you guys so much for all that you do. And of course, everything that you guys do supports the channel, whether that's Channelytics, whether it's thumbs up, thumbs down, making sure you're still subscribed to the channel. Also, when you share out the stream, that's even better. Because I as we get closer to the election day, they've already kicked quite a few streams, quite a few channels. Those that had the broader reach, they've already kicked those channels. So, but there again, nobody's exempt from the technocrats. Nobody's exempt from that, and so I really appreciate it. And so I'll see you guys later. Shout out to Old Head Deuce, Philip J. Turner. Thank you so much. I'm going to read this comment really quick from Philip J. Turner. Thank you so much, Philip, for coming in. He says, most of my knowledge came from the 1966 World Book Encyclopedia. The school threw them in the trash in boxes, so I got them out and took them home. I read every page. Wow, Philip J. Turner. That was really smart. See, that's the other thing. It's interesting that they would throw things out. Throw things out. And see, I didn't realize that they were, even at colleges, if I found a professor or if I was working at a college, or if I was working with one of their pre-college programs, if they were throwing out books, I would take the books myself, because I'm like, what are you going to do with these books? And I think that's great. And see, that's funny, because it's funny that any school, no matter what the level, would throw books out when you have schools in this country that don't have enough books, that don't have books at all. So, I mean, I actually taught in a school where we didn't have enough books. So I had to become creative. And find and use. I ended up, those same books that the college was throwing out, I had to bring those books to my classroom for materials, because we were short on books. Every single class period, there were not enough books. So I just said, okay, I tell you what, I'm just going to use these resources and work with what I have. Just yeah. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough the way the schools are, and that is my background, Old Head Deuce. That is one of my backgrounds. Yes. So, yeah, I remember taking the books from the college. They were all boxed up, and it's actually saved it actually saved the class periods, because because of the subject of music, they turned me into a babysitter. So I needed those books. We don't have enough books. You want me to babysit extra classes that have nothing to do, so I ended up just using those books to, my kids could do music theory before it was over. So I was, and some of them did really well. The kids, they were able to do pre-college. They could do pre-college theory. They could do fundamentals of music theory. So I thought the book served the class well. And in fact, I might even reach out to it's a friend of mine who was throwing those books out, but there's nothing wrong with the books. I mean, I didn't have enough to, of course, redistribute those books, and I didn't have the permission to do it at that level. But I brought that issue to my administration, and they did not mitigate it at all. So it was upon me to figure out how to bring materials to the classroom for at least 4 hours a day. I needed materials. And of course I had to reproduce some of those materials on, via photocopies, because no one was bringing any books. And, so I had some kids that really just knocked it out of the park, and knocked the music theory out of the park. And, it was, it certainly, I even had them come to the board, and they came to the board and did these things. And most of the kids that came to the board, some of them I let them volunteer to do it, but then I was able to get some of the other kids to do the same thing. And so I think some kids found that they had some talents that they didn't know that they had. And that's what happens in schools. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming on. And hold on to books. I said all that to say, if you find a book in a dark alley, rescue that book. And I know I have a friend of mine, or a cousin of mine. No, I'm not. No, Philip, I'm not. A friend of mine that when she finds books, she gives them to kids. And that's actually really valuable. They used to talk about the summertime was for reading books, and like summer reading programs. But somehow those programs never reached the kids that actually really needed to read. They weren't reading in the summertime. They were getting into all kinds of things, but reading wasn't one of them. No. Let me write that title down. Thanks for sharing that, Old Head Deuce. I really appreciate it. I'm going to make sure I get off of here before I start ranting. So I have some real... I've turned into Debbie Downer, it seems, in these times. I mean, it's, like I said, it's the cynic, a little bit of cynic in me. Not a little bit, but a lot. Or either I could say a realist, but I am not, as old school Wolf will say, I am not it doesn't make me a death by all truism person. I'm not to that extreme. So Dumbing Us Down. Seems like that book was on a list that I had, and there's a lot of books that I'm actually reading right now, but that one's not it. But I do think it's some people submit that the argument is deliberate, and I think it is at times. If these students can become less, if they have less concepts or perspectives to draw on, then they can be controlled. It's easier to control people when they don't. And the thing about it is so many people are deferring to the government as if government is God, that government can do everything. I don't know. I doubt it. So shout out to everybody in the stream. I really appreciate you guys so much. So I look forward to seeing you guys again. The next live stream, in the comments section, the video. There should be some other videos coming out. even if it's later this week, maybe today, who knows? We'll see. Some other things going on. So I really appreciate you guys for coming in. Hi, Robert L. Thank you so much for coming in. But save a book, pass it on, pass on the books wherever you can. All right, guys. Thanks so much. And enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And I appreciate you guys for supporting me here on Black Spring with Autumn. And thanks so much for taking care of the Channelytics. And please continue to keep an eye on the community tabs. So have a great rest of the day.